Take a moment to think about the tasks you do every day. From the moment you wake up, wiggle your toes, swing out of bed, and stumble or skip to the bathroom. All the actions or movements it takes to get dressed, have breakfast, say good morning, and check in with your family or housemates. Every single one of those movements requires your muscles to receive an appropriate signal from the brain and produce a force. And when this system works, it means often we complete many movements or tasks without really thinking about it. So how is this possible? Phil explains a little bit about how the brain and muscles are able to communicate with each other.
So I would say, imagine a motor neuron as like a type of electrical wire that's involved in motor production. So it's involved in producing movement. So in order to do pretty much everything the body needs to do, you need nerves, and a motor neuron is a specific type of this nerve that allows you to produce movement. And it is it's the longest type of cell in the body, the longest type of neuron that we have, and it can stretch up to 1 meter long. And so usually there's a cell body at the center and at the end, and then this has things around it called dendrites, and these can receive signals from other neurons. And then along the body is effectively the wire, and this is called an axon. And this is wrapped in called an insulin sheath, which is effectively like an insulation for an electrical wire. So it actually speeds up the conductance of what we call an action potential, which is equivalent to electrical signal being passed along the wire. So this passage along the wire eventually will reach to the end point along this axon, will reach a what's called the neurite tip, and this is where if it was attached to a muscle, for example, then it will be then this will be called a neuromuscular junction.
There are a range of different cells which are being studied in relation to MND. These are often viewed under the microscope, as shown here with some images collected by Dr. Ricky Patani and his team.
So motor neuron disease affects this motor system, predominantly this motor system. And it's so what happens is these motor neurons or electrical cables, like I just mentioned, are dying for reasons we've yet to find out. And when these neurons are dying, this means that you're able to produce less movement effectively. So and this results in a range of symptoms where if you're not getting any connection or signal to your muscles, then your muscles can no longer contract and move, and therefore they start to die and shrink away. And this is eventually so this starts with muscle wasting or lead to paralysis. So a motor neuron disease is the death of these motor neurons that inhibits movement.
MND is a progressive disease which attacks the motor neurons or nerves in the brain and spinal cord. This means muscles don't receive the right signals and become weaker, so sufferers' abilities to walk, talk, eat, drink, and breathe are affected. The problem in MND can be stated quite simply. The effects of this are, however, quite devastating, because the ability to create movement underpins all aspects of daily living, from the obvious things like walking or running and picking up objects, to the things which are maybe less obvious, like talking, swallowing and breathing.
A lot of people have problems being able to communicate, because if you lose the ability to speak, then that's such a fundamental thing. And also losing the ability to swallow. Some people have a feeding tube directly into their stomach. But if you think about it, if you're going to meet up with some friends that you haven't seen for a while, then it's like as not, you're either going to go out for a drink with them or you're going to go out for a meal and have a good chat and catch up. Well, if you've got motor neuron disease, then that immediately presents problems, and there is this element of social isolation as well as everything else that's going on.
The Motor Neuron Disease Association is a multifaceted charity focused on MND care, research and campaigning.
So it's a charity, but it's also a patient organisation. So it's there to support people living with motor neuron disease, so people with a diagnosis of MND, but also their families and carers, and sometimes young family as well. Support them in terms of getting the best services available in terms of their care, and ensuring that the healthcare and social care services are there to support them as well. It's a rare disease, so it affects about 5,000 people in the UK. So a lot of the healthcare services aren't aware of how rapidly progressing motor neuron disease is, so there's not always the necessary equipment and adaptations that people can have when they need it. We also, part as well as caring for people living with MND, we also campaign to make sure that health and social care services or government are aware of the needs of people with MND. So that's the second part of what the charity does. But as there isn't an effective treatment available, there is no cure, and it kills people within 2 or 3 years, then we are funding research into understanding motor neuron disease. And that's from everything from, in order to find a drug for motor neuron disease, you need to be able to understand what's going wrong in the first place. So when we're funding research to understand what goes wrong in motor neuron disease, once we know what goes wrong, can we develop drugs to treat that? But in the meantime, we're also looking about what's the best way to support the symptoms of motor neuron disease.
The MND Association mission is to improve care and support for people with MND, their families and carers, fund and promote research that leads to new understanding and treatments and brings us closer to a cure for MND, campaign and raise awareness so the needs of people with MND and everyone who cares for them are recognised and addressed by a wider society.
We run an awareness month every year, and last year it was about a voice, and this year we did a campaign as well about Silence Speaks. So it's quite a play on words in a way, because people with MND do lose the ability to communicate, but also because it is such a rare disease that you really have to speak up about the things that happen to people with MND and their needs in terms of health and social care professionals. And it was really simple. It was a sponsored silence. So it was, so for example, our chief exec, Sally Light, came into the office and she didn't speak all day. So she had what you call an E-tram board, really low-tech perspex outline of a board where you look at the different letters in different places around. She had a notepad and pen, a blackboard, and she's quite prolific on Twitter when she was tweeting, first hour I'm finding this really hard. We had a staff awareness day, and we played charades as a way of illustrating how much talking is an integral part of day-to-day life. And somebody was playing charades with a communication aid. So a lot of people with MND rely on communication aids, whether that's something very bespoke that's only a communication aid, or whether it's an app. So you can get apps for iPods and tablets and all sorts of things like that, which for people with MND, this advent of this kind of technology has been really amazing. So the Ice Bucket Challenge was an amazing phenomenon for us last August. It raised so much money, but more importantly, it raised a huge amount of awareness of what is a really rare disease. It was really crazy couple of weeks. It was a real privilege to be part of it, to witness it. That amount of awareness raising and that amount of fundraising, I don't think, certainly this charity's never seen before. And it's given us real scope to do lots of different things, Project Mine is one, a much more ambitious level of research funding that we could have done before. But as much as the fundraising is such an important part of it, the awareness about what motor neuron disease is has just been amazing. So because it is such a rare disease, a person with motor neuron disease would find themselves having to explain time and time again what motor neuron disease is. And there were comments that people put on social media that for the first time that they didn't have to explain motor neuron disease to their family and their friends and to their sort of casual acquaintances. So, and I think that's almost more important than the money that we raise for it. It's a real privilege to be part of being part of Motor Neuron Disease Association. You meet some fantastic people, but I think it also gives you a life lesson that you've got to grab things while they can, because you don't know what's going to come tomorrow.
A range of different research areas are supported by the MND Association. These include identifying the causes of MND, developing ways in which we can understand the disease, identifying new treatments or diagnostic approaches, and improving quality of life for people with MND. Here is Kate discussing her work developing new approaches to support early diagnosis and monitoring.
So we're looking into diagnostic methods, so ultrasound imaging to detect certain indicators of motor neuron disease. So if you go to a hospital and they think that you might have motor neuron disease, they'll be looking for certain indicators within the muscle, which we call twitches, but can be split down into groups called fasciculations, fibrillations, which will appear as just little movements within the muscle. And what we're hoping is that we can pick up these in the ultrasound and find a way to automatically assess them using computational techniques. The whole point of what we're trying to do is to try and find a way which is less invasive to assess the indicators of this disease. But the less invasiveness of the process will mean that it's easier to do more repeated testing, so over longer periods of time you can possibly assess the kind of progression of the disease and monitor it a bit more closely.
It's really exciting to do the work that I do, and there's mainly as well because of my strong interest in it. But it does feel like, yeah, I'm a smaller cog in a bigger wheel, but I feel like I'm doing something that I find interesting, that also I feel like could be producing something interesting potentially in the future. So yeah, I find it really exciting, and I enjoy it.
It seems to really affect lots of researchers all around the world. So, and they're quite collaborative. Sometimes you hear of researchers sort of almost competing with each other, but I think the MND research community really do work together. And in order to be able to have really accurate information about the research results for such a rare disease, you need large numbers. And the only way you're going to get large numbers is to collaborate with different countries. So Project Mines, it's a collaboration. I think it started off as 9-10 countries, and I think it's currently running at about 17 different countries. And the idea is to really understand the genetic contribution to motor neuron disease.
It is a very kind of a large scale movement, and you've got a lot of people working into kind of the drugs that may help give you longer time, or even kind of hopefully one day cure it. You'll have people working on kind of like genetic markers to indicate when people are going to present with this disease, and then you've got people working on better kind of diagnostic techniques, either with ultrasound or the medical imaging and things like that.
There have been some really important breakthroughs in our understanding of mechanisms which lead to MND, which will help identify and/or create new treatments. This is all part of a process though, and while science is moving forward, there are still a lot of challenges which need to be met before we can say we have effective treatments or preventative measures for this disease.